This is FM 2.0 with the Don, Dean, Stormy, and the Grizz. Forever music.
Glen Phillips.
Hi, Glenn.
How you doing? Good to see y'all.
We're going to nerd out a little bit here.
Yes,
All right.
definitely.
Just a quick backstory, Glenn. So Grizz and I were big Toad The Wet Sprocket fans, and we've seen you so many times. In fact, one special memory was you did a show in Scranton with Hootie and the Blowfish, and I got a speeding ticket on the way
on his birthday.
on my birthday.
Cop did saw him license, still gave him a ticket.
Beats a DUI.
But the best part of that show, or one of my favorite part, your set was amazing. Two things happened. One, you came out, and when Hootie would do that one song, "Let Her Be," you guys did like that was hilarious.
Letter C, letter D, and
we did. Yeah, we were hoping it could be a Sesame Street song. Never.
oh, that would have been perfect.
I know.
That, and then your drummer at the time threw the drumsticks out into the crowd, and I couldn't find Grizz anywhere. And all of a sudden, he runs up to me with his trench coat, and he goes, "Dude!" And I thought he was. He had his drums. He had the drumsticks.
Nice.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's great to have you, man. And
Thank you.
out on the road, still going. How's it feel? Are you still feeling fresh and after all the years of touring and recording? And
I mean, generally, yeah. I mean, some days more fresh than others, life being what it is. But
Right.
in general, the band's, I think, having more fun and sounding better than we have in a long time. You know, we've gone through a lot of ups and downs, and the last few years have been really great. Like, yeah.
so, I was looking at the All You Want, that collection of songs. They're basically re-looks at the songs, right? They're reimagining them.
Re-recorded or
Re-recordings. It's a partially creative and partially modern economics, which are owning a version where you have the master instead of so there's a practical side to the collection, but it was also really fun to go in a second time and record these, change a few of them a little bit. Like Windmills is extended instrumentally. It's more like we do it live. But it was a fun project to do a while ago, and just recently put out a new version of it that also contains some songs off the more recent records, because hoping people will listen to those and realize it's still pretty good.
One of the songs you have, and I'm so glad you put it on this one, just sharing a personal thing. I will not take these things for granted. Is what, there's a few songs in my life that every time I hear them, I get emotional. I think like God Only Knows by the Beach Boys does it to me.
Mm-hmm.
That song does it to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's good company.
And why is when you get into that segment about, and on the telephone, you offer reassurance, and it's like all these things, especially someone, if you get depressed or you're down and you start talking about all these things like the rolling canyons and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It is lonely here, not alone. And on the telephone, you offer visions dancing. I'm listening, music in the bedroom, laughter in the hall. Dive into the ocean, singing by the fire, running through the forest, standing in the wind, rolling canyons. I will not take these things for granted.
That song just really seemed like came from a place, just like truly from your heart, and how it just resonates. Like it just hits me every time. Do you get emotional too when you do that song live still?
Sometimes, yeah, it still hits. I mean, it was, wrote that, what, 20 years old or something, but I missed home back then too. And, I love what I do out on the road, but I'm also pretty good at being a homebody. So, just missing the little quiet things. And, there aren't wires in the phones anymore, or at least there's wires in the phones, but not connecting them. But the rest of the song held up pretty well.
Yeah, on the telephone, right?
Yeah.
It still works for me. That song still hits me.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
I'm curious. Your sound is timeless, and I had read that you listened to a lot of Beatles and Pink Floyd in the 80s. I'm sure there were some other sounds, so I want to come back to that. But what I always thought was kind of interesting is when you look at 1991 Fear. I've always thought that, first off, you found your own lane. I mean, there was nobody else that had the sound like that in that time. So as the sounds of the 80s are beginning to wane, you got grunge coming in, and then Toad the Wet Sprocket comes out, and you got your own sound. And what I always thought was kind of interesting is, had you released that album, let's just say it came out in 95, you probably would have been labeled post-grunge. But the reality is you were out before grunge. So it's like you were post-grunge before post-grunge was a thing. And even
pre-grunge and post-grunge.
Yeah, well, yeah. And even now the sound has remained timeless, relevant. Definitely. I mean, it's a great vibe. So, what else were you listening to in the 80s? What was in your mind when you were crafting that sound?
I mean, early 80s, childhood, I was raised on, by my parents on show tunes, lots of Rodgers and Hammerstein, lots of swing, Benny Goodman. My brother turned me on to the Beatles, Doobie Brothers, Pink Floyd. Then I got really into disco. Then I had the traditional, like, somebody told me disco wasn't cool anymore and I shouldn't like it. So I got into metal for a few years. And like when I met Todd, when I was a freshman in high school, met Todd, and he turned me on to the Replacements and Husker Du, REM, Elvis Costello.
So you do have a jangle pop.
Yeah, definitely had that background.
Gotcha.
And
you got into the rabbit hole.
They were at the time post-punk, right? Husker Du and Replacements were quite, they were in their own world too. Oh, yeah. But I was also really into Tears for Fears, Peter Gabriel. So I think part of that influence when we made Fear, was like, I did love these big, well-crafted records. I was a huge Talk fan. So wanted to make something that had, it was really into 4AD. So all the bands on the, that label, Cocktail Twins, early Throwing Muses.
Anya Donnelly.
Yeah, there was an eclectic group of music going in there. And I think also there's just, with the band, it was the only band we'd ever been in. So we learned how to play around each other, and you kind of can't help but sound like yourself if you don't know how to play. So we also had that going for us.
Some of those bands you mentioned, it did answer a question, because I've always thought, wow, and I do think in some categories you get classified as jangle pop. If you threw a Rickenbacker 12-string in there, I mean, boom. But it's there, but it's different at the same time. But as soon as you mention some of those bands, it's like, okay, there absolutely is. And this is important to me because I do a TV show, and I think the next episode after the one I'm producing right now, I think I do want to talk about the evolution of jangle rock. And I keep thinking, I need to be talking about some Toad the Wet Sprocket in this. So
throw us in.
Cool.
Absolutely. You mentioned the Replacements. Like every time I hear Alex Chilton, that song, it has that da 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 da. Just that little part right there gives me absolute goosebumps. Just a little section in the song does it to me every time.
It's God, they were a great band.
So on this, looking at the album again, you mentioned Windmills. That's another song where the bridge hits me. that bridge is so emotional. Just because Windmills says that it's funny how a song is like a windmill. Like you actually like when you wrote that song, there's actually a windmill in my community, like a windmill up there. And literally I will put the song on when I'm by the windmill because it's just like that. It just reminds me of it. But that bridge is so beautiful. And it brings me to you as a songwriter. Do you feel like sometimes that songs come from somewhere else? Like you don't know where they come from? Like you'll write something out, you'll look back at the page and go, where did this come from?
Often. I mean, if they're good, yeah. More often than I would like.
You don't want to admit it when they're not so good, right?
Yeah. No, if they're not good, I know I wrote it. But it's, I don't know. I mean, I think like things like that bridge. I love bridges. I love things that kind of will take you just for 1 minute into something that's unexpected harmonically, but that kind of makes sense. And there's a combination. I can't remember what it was like writing the bridge on that one, but it goes into some interesting chromatic spaces. And I think often I'll have an on ramp or hear something melodically that's going in there. And sometimes I know how it's going to get back to the original key or how it's going to relate. And sometimes I have to do a lot of plumbing to get it there and trial and error. But I know where I want it to take off. I know where I want it to expand into. I know the unexpected turn I want it to take. It's not always clear how you get back to the road from there, but you can always find a way.
I love hearing you talk about the bridge. Don, I know you guys talked to Bill Champlin, and I talked to him a couple months ago from Chicago, and we were scheduled to talk for 30 minutes. I think we talked for 2 hours, and there was a good, I'm not kidding, there was a good 30 minutes there. We were just talking about how too much music today, they forget the bridge. They're in such a hurry to get to the hook as fast as possible, and then they stay on it. And it's become somewhat of a lost art in creating that transition for the listener. So
same with the pre-chorus. It's the same thing. They just jump right into the chorus. Yep. A good pre-chorus is awesome because you can just change it up just a little bit and then go into another, like the actual chorus, and it just makes a beautiful song.
Like, and I will not take these things for granted.
Exactly.
That pre-chorus right there just takes you that emotional lift to the chorus. That's
well, and it takes its time getting there. I mean, I think when people are doing songs for streaming now, I forget what the Drake formula is. It's not the tightest formula, but it's like, more songs don't have to be more than 2 minutes 30, like repeat your hook, It's depending on how you're writing. And if you're really thinking of streaming formats as opposed to, album listeners. And I grew up in album listening days. And so that was always, you write for the medium, right? I don't know if you ever, remembering like the David Byrne, Why Music Works book, and just talking about, if you're writing music to play outside, it's going to be different than music to play in an echoing chamber music hall. It's going to be, it's going to fit the place it's meant to go. And if you're really, paying attention to the requirements of streaming, you're going to write differently. It's got to hit the chorus quick. It's got to get in there. A bridge is redundant. And so, but we're still locked in another era. So
that breaks my heart to hear you say that it's redundant, but I hear you. You're right.
Well, and that's only if you're writing for that, and it's not redundant. I mean, a lot of music, I rely so often on like kind of harmonic movement, but I'm jealous of people like a band like Spoon. It was an awesome band, and there's almost no harmonic movement in their songs. They're incredible. Or Tenarowin. If you listen to Tenarowin, it's like half those songs, like one chord the entire time, but it's like other things are happening that are just as important. But there's a classic songwriting style that's the verse, chorus, bridge, that I'm very fond of. I still like writing a lot of bridges, but it's not.
Yes, thank God.
You said thank God.
But I mean, they're different different forms convey different, convey different things. And I think there's room for it all. God, a 1-chord song is an amazing thing to pull off. And, not everything has to be tricky. But I still do love a good bridge.
But don't get me wrong. I mean, I love songs like Pink Floyd. I like songs that just break from the mold completely. I think my thing is too much hook is like if you take all the pieces out of cereal, sweet cereal, and you just keep the marshmallows,
Yes.
And that's where I worry about today is it's an impatience. You go right to the hook, and I think there should be a lot more creativity in the music. Make the listener uncomfortable at times. Don't give them the hook. Build tension.
But the way that we used to listen to, and I mean, even the economics of, music listening when we were growing up, if you wanted to get into an album, you had to buy the record,
It's true.
And so, or you had to have a friend with the record and bring a cassette over, and in real time, you had to listen to the record and take it. But I mean, for the most part, you could only afford to have a certain amount of music that you could really get deep into that wasn't radio music. And if you didn't love, whatever band, whose every album, and you got the new REM and you're like, I don't know if this is you'd still listen to it 20, 30 times all the way through to figure out what you could love about it. And you would grow to love it. Mm-hmm. You would grow to understand it. And in the streaming world, I think we don't give that same amount of time to records. I mean, I think part of the vinyl craze, part of it might be sound, but most people have pretty crappy record players. I think the main thing about records is, as an artifact, they make you sit down and listen to them. And people appreciate having a medium that physically forces you to be present in the room, to not stomp around, to flip it over in the middle, to clean it off. And, it's the current thing is even, I think, less attention than we used to give to radio. It's like, it's a constant background of your playlist, and you'll mark a song that you like more than another, but it's an era of distractibility. And I think people are still making interesting, really cool music. But the stuff on the radio is aiming for something else, which I think is stream driven. And even back in the day, it was "Don't bore us, get to the chorus," right?
Right. No, it's true.
The days of the concept album are gone, unfortunately.
Don't say that.
Yes,
you're right. You're right. I hate it, but you're right.
Well, I mean, it's possible the days of a band like Pink Floyd, like breaking through and being the biggest band in the world, are, that's a harder thing to do. But you still get, I mean, God, is it King Lizard and the Gizzard Wizard? I never get it right. King Lizard and the Gizzard Wizard? King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard? They're trippy as hell. They're amazing. They do the weirdest records, and they put out a shocking number of them, because I think there's 4 writers in the band, but they'll do a microtonal record, and they're hilarious and weird, and and concept albums, even Kendrick Lamar, it's like To Pimp a Butterfly was a masterpiece. Wasn't a rock concept record, but it's one of the greatest hip hop records ever made. I realize it's not brand new anymore, but I think people can still pull it out for a good concept record. I'm sure there's one somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just got to get people to listen to them.
And once again, in Kendrick Lamar's defense, that record, that was a big record, and an important record, and an incredibly ambitious record, and successful as well. So I will give it to Kendrick Lamar for that one. That was pretty amazing piece of work.
There you go. There'll be a Toad the Wet Sprocket hip hop album coming out soon.
Probably not.
No,
I'm okay with that.
Not my wheelhouse. It wouldn't be great.
I wouldn't know what to do with that. It'd be like when a cat sees something like a laser on the wall. I'd be like, "What is this sound on here?"
Yeah,
that would be really different. But
you don't want to hear me try to rap.
Of all the the songs that you put on All You Want, because that's the one we're talking about, and everyone should go out and get it. It's called the bonus edition. All You Want. There are 19 tracks on here to go through, and they will sound slightly different than what you had on your regular record, but they are more enhanced. I really love the takes on them. One of the songs that Grizz and I both agree on, one of our favorite songs by you, is Crazy Life.
Yeah, that's Todd, our guitarist. And he writes great music. About half the songs in the band start with his music. Some of them are all his. Sometimes I'll add a bridge or something. Crazy Life was one of his musically. And I had just read, often he'll have like crazy life, and he had this one phrase, and I had just finished In the Spirit of Crazy Horse, the Paula Matheson book on Leonard Peltier and the American Indian movement. And so I kind of took it lyrically in that direction, but Todd sings that one, which is why I sound so different. It's a great song. I love that song.
It is a great song. The other one that I want to bring up for people too that I love that really hits is Crowing. That song,
that is you.
That's definitely Glenn. That song just hits at such an emotional level. Just like in a way, like I will not take these things for granted, but just about that love that somebody's not getting, right? Crowing for repair, you give him love, attention, you can keep it there. That line,
and it was never a question. He was crowing for repair. You give him love and affection, you couldn't keep him there.
Just resonated with me. It just makes you think about the relationships in your life, and how they are. When you were crafting that song and writing it, was that one of those that when you were done, it's almost like, it feels like a therapeutic type song when you were writing that?
Yeah. I mean, it was partially about relational habits I noticed in myself, partially about, observing friends and other people, and, that it's hard when you're, when you're dealing with your own insecurities in a huge way. It's hard to just accept love at face value because you don't feel worthy of it. And so there are these, relational loops people find each other in where you're like really wanting to treat each other well. And at the same time, you just don't have the skills, don't have the self-love, don't have the capacity. And so watching people just hurt each other, habitually, and walk into a relationship wanting one thing, but, ending up with something quite different. So yeah, it was that just, it's interesting getting, what we choose in relationship and what kind of culture we make in the people we're closest to. And, as you get older, you see people who manage to evolve together and figure out new ways. And, some people never get that one. I mean, I just got married for a second time. I got divorced about 10 years ago, but got married for a second time about a month ago. Never thought I'd be back in the state where that was going to appeal. Never thought I'd be, well enough to want to like recommit to that degree. And I was as surprised as anyone that I did. But it's interesting to start again in midlife and have a different palette. There's so much that's automatic in relationship that at some point, if you're not closely examining it, is really, really hard to change. It becomes like groundwork. It's cultural. It's not whether somebody's a good person or a bad person. You build a culture, and cultures are hard to replumb. So it takes a lot of mutual effort.
That's deep.
That's
That's fantastic. Like, that could be a book.
it actually brought to my mind, makes me want to ask, Transient Whales. Where did that's a great metaphor. When did that hit?
That actually came, I mean, that's my last, hopefully it's my last post-divorce song. That's the way I think of that.
I'm wondering if that was, okay.
And it's a little bit of an empty nest song, a little bit of a post-divorce song. The title came actually, there's a great singer-songwriter in Austin, Texas, Matt the Electrician. And he has a Bob Schneider style songwriting game where every week he sends out a title, and there's about 20 of us, and we all write a song using that title at some point. Doesn't have to be in the chorus, it can just be in the verse. But one week the prompt was Transient Whales, and I love playing the game because you kind of never know.
Oh, that's wild.
Where the title is going to lead you.
I like
for me, it was about, more than anything, I think like from my original marriage, and it was something that was happening anyway as my kids were getting older. My kids are like, my youngest turns 22 today. So they're 22, 26, 27. And seeing the shape of the family change, things made a lot of sense to me when I would get off tour. Just played with my kids all the time. I loved being a dad, and I never quite figured out what to do with myself once they got older. And there was some sense, of having lost not just that relationship, but there's three things, right? There's you, there's your partner, and then there's the family you create. There's this other being, and it's got its own needs and wants and life cycle. And to see that change so dramatically, I think there's a lot of songs about the divorce that are dealing with, the other person, you hurt me, you did that to me, I'm pissed off, whatever, I miss you. But I hadn't really heard many songs that were like, I miss having a home that people came to. I missed, our neighborhood and our friends and our habits and our kids being a certain age, and these things you can't ever get back that change that, or maybe you can in different ways, but wanted to write a song about like that nostalgia, that thing that changed.
It's a beautiful song. And the lyrics are incredible. And it's actually really interesting. And so the title itself was kind of just a random exercise, but the title works. I mean, that's just brilliant. It makes sense.
Yeah. All we have is each other and the songs we sing. I mean, that's a
great one too. All we have is each other and the songs we sing. Is that what you said? Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. You just come out with them.
It's very whaley.
That game almost reminded me of refrigerator magnets, because remember that, Grizz? We have those refrigerators. Oh, yeah. We come up with song titles.
Totally. But I think writing from a title is great. Like half of songwriting for me is getting out of the way. Like you sit down and you're like, I'm going to write a song about the environment. And then you'll have like, and number one, it'll probably suck because it's didactic and you're telling people how to think. And but then you'll write one line that just feels real, and it may have nothing to do with the subject you started to write about. And your job as an artist is to serve that line and come back to your idea later, but serve the thing that came out of you that actually makes sense and makes you feel something. And writing from titles, they're not always good. I've written a lot of terrible songs from titles, but my entire last solo record is actually songs from that songwriting game. It's all things that I wrote from a title, and it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you get, but it's a really cool way to write. It's always a surprise.
Or you could be like David Bowie, who had a ton of titles that made no sense to the lyrics.
Yeah.
You're just like, well, where'd that come from?
Well, the Pixies do that too.
The Pixies do, yeah, they do, yeah. Let me just say before we Glenn has to go here, they're on tour. Their next date is Friday in Omaha, Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. And then I wanted to point out the dates that I know people are in that are watching and really going to pay attention to. Yeah. He hits New Jersey on September 28th. And then Charlotte, October 1st, the Night Theater. Capitol Theater, where I am in Clearwater. I've actually seen you solo at the Hideaway, Glenn.
Oh, sweet! I love the Hideaway.
That was a great place. So,
is it? Is it gone now?
No, they moved it.
He's at a brewery. I did.
Yeah, he's a brewery now.
I did a show there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. See? Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. No, but and I just seeing that's the other thing. I love Toad the Wet Sprocket, but then if Glenn ever comes back and does an acoustic thing, go see it. It's just awesome. But go to toadthewetsprocket.com. You'll get all the dates.
Yep.
Especially when he's at a winery, that's even better. Like in Nashville, you're doing like a residency, like 2 days.
Oh, winery? It may be 2 shows in one night.
2 shows in one night at a winery. Oh, the second show will be awesome.
Yeah.
Last night of the tour too, so it'll be exciting.
Ooh, there we go. That's where Glenn will go. What song you want to hear?
Yeah. No, I'm getting old. I'm getting dry on the road. Like it all comes down to like voice maintenance now. I am the most boring touring musician on the face of the earth. We finish the show and I basically go I go straight to bed. Don't drink, go straight to bed.
I'd be the same way, trust me.
Yeah.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, Glen Phillips, what an honor to have you, man. This has meant a lot to us.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Have a great, great night, Glenn.
Cool. Thank you for having me in. Take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Glenn.
All right.
Go see Toad the Wet Sprocket, people. And you're